I thought I had found the one. Amber said yes when I proposed 6 months ago, and I felt like the luckiest guy alive. She wanted to save herself for marriage because of her faith and family values, and honestly, I respected that. It made what we had feel more meaningful, more pure. We were building something real, something worth waiting for. But looking back, I should have paid attention to the small things. The late-night texts, the way she avoided eye contact sometimes. I should have known something was off when she started coming home late from those Wednesday prayer meetings. The night I found out the truth, I was sitting at my laptop planning our honeymoon. Before I tell you how my perfect relationship became the biggest betrayal of my life, I want to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear how trust can be shattered by the two people you love most. Now let me take you back to the moment everything started falling apart. Amber and I had been together for 3 years. We met at a church potluck through a mutual friend, and I remember thinking she had the warmest smile I had ever seen. She was a kindergarten teacher, the kind of person who lights up when she talks about her students. Our relationship was simple and comfortable. Friday night, dates cooking together on weekends, movie nights, on my couch. Life felt easy with her. She told me early on that she was saving herself for marriage. It was not just a casual decision. Her family was deeply religious, and she had made a promise to herself years before we met. I will not lie, it was different from anything I had experienced in past relationships, but I respected it. Actually, more than that, I admired it. It made our connection feel deeper, like we were investing in something beyond the physical. We talked for hours, shared our dreams, built a foundation I thought was unshakable. When I proposed last spring at the botanical gardens where we had our first date, she cried and said yes before I even finished asking. We set the wedding date for October 6 months away. Everything moved quickly after that. We booked the venue, a beautiful barn outside the city. She spent weekends trying on dresses with her mom and mine. We designed invitations together, argued playfully about the font choice. Both our families were thrilled. My mom kept saying how lucky I was to find someone like Amber. My older brother Garrett had just gone through a rough divorce 8 months earlier. He was 31, 3 years older than me, and the split hit him hard. He moved back in with our parents temporarily, while he got back on his feet. I felt bad for him. He seemed lost, spending most nights drinking beer in the basement and watching sports alone. When Amber and I visited my parents for Sunday dinners, she always made an effort to talk to him, cheer him up. I thought it was sweet. I thought she was just being kind to my family. That was my first mistake. Trusting too easily. About 2 months before the wedding, things started to shift. Amber joined a Wednesday night Bible study group at church. She said they were doing a series on marriage preparation and she wanted to be ready. I thought it was a great idea. She left every Wednesday around 7 in the evening and usually came home by 9. But then 9 became 10. 10 became 11. Some nights, she did not walk through the door until almost midnight. When I asked about it, she said the group discussions just ran long. They were going deep into topics about communication, conflict resolution, building a Christian household. It all sounded reasonable. I wanted her to be prepared. I wanted us to be prepared. So I nodded and kissed her goodnight. When she finally came home, even though she seemed distant, distracted, she started pulling away in other ways too. Our Friday date nights became less frequent. She would cancel last minute, saying she was exhausted from work or needed alone time to decompress. When we did spend time together, she was on her phone more than usual, texting someone and smiling at the screen. When I asked who she was talking to, she would say it was her friend Georgia or someone from the Bible study group. I had no reason not to believe her. Amber also became physically distant. She used to curl up next to me on the couch, rest her head on my shoulder during movies. Now, she sat on the opposite end, leaving space between us. When I reached for her hand, she would hold it for a moment, then pull away to adjust her hair or grab her phone. I told myself it was just pre-wedding jitters. Everyone said planning a wedding was stressful. Maybe she needed space to process everything. Then I started noticing how close she had gotten with Garrett. He came over to my apartment more often, usually when Amber was there. At first I thought he was just trying to escape the loneliness of living with our parents again. He and Amber would sit in the kitchen talking while I worked in my home office. I could hear them laughing, joking around. I remember feeling happy about it. My brother and my future wife getting along. What could be better? But there were moments that felt off. I would walk into the room and they would stop talking abruptly, or they would be standing close together by the counter, and when I entered, they would step apart quickly. Amber would smile at me like nothing was wrong, and Garrett would mumble something about needing to leave. I brushed it off. I did not want to be that guy, the jealous, paranoid fiancé. One Wednesday evening, I decided to surprise Amber. I had been working long hours on a project at work, and I felt guilty for not being more present. I thought I would pick her up after Bible study and take her to her favorite diner for a late dinner. I drove to the church around 9:30, expecting to see her car in the parking lot. It was not there. I called her cell. She answered after 4 rings, sounding slightly out of breath. I asked where she was, and she said they had moved the study to someone's house that night. She gave me a quick excuse about the church being double booked. I asked which house, thinking I could still meet her there. She hesitated then. Said she would just meet me at home. She would be done soon. I sat in the church parking lot for a few minutes. After we hung up, staring at the empty space where her car should have been. Something felt wrong, but I could not put my finger on it. I drove home, that uneasy feeling settling in my chest. A week later, I came home early from work. I had finished my tasks ahead of schedule and wanted to surprise Amber with takeout from her favorite Thai place. When I pulled up to my apartment building, I saw Garrett's truck parked out front. I thought maybe he was dropping something off. I walked inside and found them in the living room. Amber and Garrett were sitting on the couch, but the moment I opened the door, they moved apart quickly. Too quickly. Garrett stood up like he had been caught doing something wrong. Amber smiled at me, but it did not reach her eyes. I asked what was going on. Garrett said he had stopped by to borrow some tools from my garage. Amber said she had let him in because I was not home yet. It made sense. It should have made sense. But the way they looked at each other, the tension in the air, it all felt wrong. That night, I could not sleep. I lay next to Amber, listening to her, breathe, wondering if I was losing my mind. Was I imagining things? Was the stress of wedding planning making me paranoid? The next evening, Amber was in the shower. Her phone was on the nightstand, and it buzzed with a text. I glanced at it without thinking. The screen showed a message from a contact saved as G, and the preview read, "Tonight was amazing. Cannot wait for next Wednesday." My stomach dropped. I stared at the message, trying to make sense of it. Who was G, Georgia, Gina? But the tone felt wrong. Too intimate. I told myself it could be innocent. Maybe a friend excited about Bible study. But deep down I knew. I knew something was very wrong. I did not confront her that night. I did not know what to say. Instead, I started paying closer attention. I noticed how she guarded her phone, always keeping it face down, taking it with her, even to the bathroom. I noticed how she tensed up when Garrett's name came up in conversation. I noticed the guilt in her eyes when she kissed me goodbye. 3 weeks before our wedding, I needed to print out the timeline we had created for the big day. My printer was out of ink, so I asked Amber if I could use her laptop. She said sure, barely looking up from her phone. I opened her laptop in the study, pulled up the document, and sent it to print. That is when I saw it. Her iMessage app was still open on the screen, and the conversation at the top was with G. I knew I should not look. I knew it was wrong, but my hands moved before my brain could stop them. I scrolled through the messages. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it might burst through my chest. The messages were not from Georgia or Gina. They were from Garrett. My brother. I cannot believe we have been doing this for 2 months. He has no idea. Wednesday nights are my favorite now. I feel guilty, but I cannot stop. I kept scrolling, my vision blurring. There were messages about meeting times, about making sure I was working late. There was one that made me feel physically sick. Your place or mine tonight. Make sure Juan is working late. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen. This could not be real. This had to be some kind of joke, some horrible misunderstanding. But the evidence was right in front of me. Dates, times, details. 2 months. They had been doing this for 2 months. I checked the contact information just to be sure. It was Garrett's number. My brother. The person I had grown up with, shared a room with, trusted my entire life. I do not know how long I sat there. It could have been minutes or hours. Eventually I closed the laptop and walked out of the study like a ghost. Amber was in the kitchen making tea. She smiled at me and asked if I had gotten what I needed. I nodded, unable to speak, and went to the bedroom. I did not confront her that night. I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to be absolutely sure before I blew up my entire life. The following Wednesday, I told Amber I had to work late. A big deadline, I said. She nodded sympathetically and kissed my cheek before leaving for her Bible study. I watched her drive away, then waited 15 minutes before getting in my car. I parked 2 blocks from my apartment and walked back, staying in the shadows. At 8 o'clock, Garrett's truck pulled up. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment, looking around like he was checking to see if anyone was watching. Then he got out and walked to my front door, using the spare key I had given him months ago for emergencies. 15 minutes later, Amber's car appeared. She parked on the street and hurried inside. I watched from across the road, my whole body shaking. Part of me wanted to storm in right then, but I forced myself to wait. I needed to catch them. I needed undeniable proof. I waited 30 minutes. They felt like the longest 30 minutes of my life. Then I walked quietly to the back door of my apartment, the one that led through the kitchen. I had a key, obviously. It was my home. The apartment was quiet, except for sounds coming from upstairs. From my bedroom. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, every part of me wanting to turn around and leave, to pretend I had never seen anything. But I could not. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The bedroom door was slightly open. I could see inside, and there they were, Amber and Garrett, in my bed. The bed I had shared with her, where we had talked about our future, where she had fallen asleep in my arms dozens of times. I stood in the doorway for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 seconds. Time moved strangely, like I was watching everything through water. Then Amber turned her head and saw me. Her eyes went wide. She screamed. Garrett spun around, his face going pale. For a moment nobody moved. Nobody spoke. We just stared at each other in this horrible frozen tableau. Then Amber scrambled to cover herself, grabbing a sheet. Garrett sat up, but did not move from the bed. I stood there, tears running down my face, unable to say a word. Juan, Amber finally whispered, "I can explain." I found my voice, though it came out broken and raw. How long? She looked down. 2 months. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I turned to Garrett. You are my brother. How could you? He would not look at me. He just stared at the floor like a coward. You said you were saving yourself. I said to Amber, my voice shaking. You made me wait 3 years. You made me believe it meant something. She started crying, but I did not care. I could not care. Why him? I asked. Why my brother? She did not answer. The silence was deafening. Then she said something that shattered whatever was left of my heart. You are still a virgin, Juan. You would not understand. I needed someone with experience. Someone who knows what they are doing. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward, All this time, all her talk about faith and waiting and building something meaningful, and this was what she really thought. I was not enough. I was inadequate. I was a joke. Garrett spoke up, then his voice quiet. She came to me first, man. I tried to say no. I looked at him, this person who was supposed to be my brother, and felt nothing but disgust. You tried to say no, you tried. What a hero. Amber was still crying. I do love you, Juan. I really do. But I have needs you cannot fulfill. After we get married, things will be different. We can work through this. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. She actually thought we were still getting married. She thought she could keep both of us, have her perfect Christian wedding, while continuing to sleep with my brother behind my back. Get out, I said quietly. Juan, please. We can talk about this. Get out of my apartment. Both of you. Now. I turned and walked downstairs. I heard them scrambling to get dressed, whispering to each other. I sat on the couch in the dark, numb as they came down the stairs. Amber tried to approach me, but I held up my hand. Do not, I said. Just leave. They left. I sat there alone in the dark for hours, crying, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Around midnight, I called my best friend Kyle. I told him everything. He told me to come over immediately. I packed a bag and left my own apartment because I could not stand to be there anymore. I spent 3 days at Kyle's place, barely eating, barely sleeping. Kyle let me process, did not push me to talk when I was not ready. But by the 3rd day, something shifted inside me. The shock began to fade, and in its place came clarity. I was not going to let them destroy me. I was not going to be the victim in this story. They had betrayed me in the worst possible way, but I was going to come out of this stronger. I was going to make sure they faced consequences for what they had done. I made a plan, a detailed, methodical plan. First, I needed evidence, solid, undeniable proof. I went back to my apartment when I knew Amber would be at work. I accessed her laptop again and took screenshots of every message between her and Garrett. I exported them to a PDF file. I went through her email and found confirmations for hotel bookings. They had not just been using my apartment. They had been going to hotels, nicer ones. Then I found something that made my blood boil. The credit card statements. Amber and I had opened a joint account 6 months ago to save for the wedding and pay for shared expenses. She had been using that card to book hotel rooms. I had been unknowingly paying for their affair. I printed everything. Messages, emails, credit card statements. I saved voice messages Amber had sent Garrett, including one where she said, I love sneaking around with you. It is so much more exciting than boring, Juan. Boring. That is what I was to her. With all the evidence gathered, I moved to phase 2 of my plan. Most people would have quietly called off the wedding, maybe told a few close friends and family what happened. They would have handled it privately, discreetly. But I was not going to do that. They had humiliated me. They had betrayed me. They were going to face the consequences publicly. I spent an entire evening drafting an email. I kept it factual, not emotional. I explained that the wedding was canceled. I explained why. I attached the evidence, screenshots of messages, copies of hotel bookings paid for with our joint account. I did not embellish. I did not dramatize. I just presented the facts and let them speak for themselves. Then I sent it to every single person on our wedding guest list, 120 people, both families, all our friends, everyone from church coworkers, everyone who had received a wedding invitation. The email subject line was simple: wedding cancellation and the truth you deserve to know. Within hours, my phone started blowing up, but I had turned off notifications. I did not want to deal with it yet. I had more to do. I called a family meeting. Just my parents, Garrett and me. I told them I had something important to discuss. When we gathered in my parents' living room the next evening, I laid out all the evidence on the coffee table. I let them read through it themselves. My mother cried. My father's face turned red with anger. Garrett sat there silently, his head in his hands. "How could you do this to your brother?" my dad asked Garrett, his voice shaking. Garrett tried to defend himself. "Amber seduced me. I was lonely after the divorce. I was not thinking straight." "You are 31 years old," I said, my voice cold. "You are not a child. You made a choice. Every single time. For 2 months." My mother looked at Garrett with such disappointment it was painful to watch. "We raised you better than this." "I am sorry," Garrett mumbled. "I am so sorry." "Sorry does not fix this," my father said. "You need to leave this house. Tonight." Garrett looked up shocked. "Dad, come on. I mean it. Pack your things. Find somewhere else to stay. I cannot look at you right now." Garrett left that night. I found out later he moved into a cheap apartment across town. My parents stood by me completely, which meant more than I can express. I had lost my brother and my fiancée, but I still had them. The financial piece was next. I went to the bank and closed the joint account, taking out only the money I had contributed. I left Amber's portion untouched. I was not going to steal from her no matter what she had done to me. I called every wedding vendor and canceled. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the DJ, the photographer. Some of them were understanding and refunded my deposits. Others charged cancellation fees, but it was worth it. Then I calculated exactly how much Amber had spent from our joint account on hotel rooms for her and Garrett. $1,200. I sent her an itemized invoice via email, requesting immediate repayment. To my surprise, she paid it within a week. No argument, no pushback. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she was just trying to make it go away. I did not care. I just wanted what was mine. The fallout was swift and brutal. The email I had sent spread through our social circles like wildfire. People from church where Amber had claimed to be attending Bible study were especially disappointed. Several of her close friends reached out to me to apologize and say they had cut ties with her. Her reputation in our community was destroyed. Amber tried calling me dozens of times in the days after. She sent long text messages begging for forgiveness, asking if we could talk, saying she had made a terrible mistake. I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social media platform. I did not want to hear from her ever again. Her mother called me one evening crying, apologizing for her daughter's behavior. She said she was ashamed and heartbroken. I told her I appreciated the call, but that I needed space from everyone connected to Amber. She understood. As for Amber and Garrett, I heard through mutual friends that they tried dating after everything fell apart. It lasted about 2 months before they broke up. Apparently, a relationship built on lies and betrayal does not have a strong foundation. Who could have guessed Garrett moved to a different city a few months later? We have not spoken since that night. At my parents' house. I do not know if we ever will. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Amber stayed in town, but her social life was essentially over. She lost most of her friends, her standing in the church community, and the respect of everyone who had known her. I saw her once months later at a coffee shop. She looked tired, sad. She saw me too. Started to approach, then thought better of it, and left quickly. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness where she used to be. The first 3 months after the breakup were the hardest of my life. I felt angry, betrayed, and profoundly sad. I questioned everything. My judgment, my worth, my ability to trust anyone. I replayed every moment of our relationship looking for signs I had missed, wondering how I could have been so blind. Kyle was there for me through all of it. He let me crash on his couch when I could not stand to be in my own apartment. He listened to me rant at 2 in the morning. He reminded me that none of this was my fault, that I had done nothing wrong. I also started seeing a therapist. I was skeptical at first, but it helped more than I expected. She helped me process the trauma. Understand that betrayal says everything about the person who commits it, and nothing about the person who is betrayed. She helped me see that Amber's actions were about her own brokenness, not my inadequacy. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into my projects, stayed late at the office, volunteered for extra assignments. My manager noticed, and 3 months after the breakup, I got promoted to senior engineer. It felt good to have something go right. I also started taking better care of myself physically. I joined a gym and started working out regularly. Not to impress anyone or prove anything, but because it made me feel strong and in control when everything else felt chaotic. I also started eating better, sleeping more, drinking less. On weekends, I joined a hiking group. I needed to get out of my apartment, out of my own head. The group was full of friendly people who did not know my history, who did not look at me with pity. We hiked local trails, grabbed lunch after talked about normal things. It was refreshing. Slowly over months, I started to feel like myself again. Not the same person I was before all this happened, but someone new. Someone wiser, more cautious, but also more confident. I had survived the worst betrayal I could imagine, and I was still standing. 6 months after the breakup, I realized something important. If I had married Amber, I would have spent years living a lie. She would have continued the affair or found someone else, and I would have been trapped in a marriage built on deception. In a strange way, discovering the truth when I did was the best thing that could have happened. It was painful, but it saved me from a much worse future. I heard through mutual connections that Amber and Garrett had tried to make a relationship work, but failed miserably. They had nothing in common, except the thrill of sneaking around, and once that was gone, there was nothing left. Garrett moved to another state for work, and essentially cut ties with our entire family. My parents were heartbroken, but they understood why I could not forgive him. Amber stayed in our town but became somewhat of a social pariah. The church community she had been so involved in wanted nothing to do with her after the truth came out. She lost her close friends. I did not take pleasure in her suffering, but I did not feel bad for her either. She had made her choices. As for me, I started to open myself up to the possibility of dating again. Though I was much more careful this time. I was not in a rush. I had learned that being alone is better than being with someone who does not respect you. The experience taught me something crucial about trust. Real trust is not built on words or promises. It is built on consistent actions over time. Amber could say she loved me, say she was saving herself, say all the right things, but her actions told a different story. I learned to pay attention to what people do, not just what they say. I also learned about boundaries. I had been so eager to be the understanding, supportive partner that I ignored my own instincts. When things felt off, I dismissed my feelings as paranoia or insecurity. I would not make that mistake again. My intuition matters. My feelings matter. I matter. The biggest lesson, though, was about self-respect. For years, I had felt lucky that Amber chose me, like I had won some kind of prize. But the truth is, she should have felt lucky to have me. I was loyal, kind, supportive, honest. Those are not small things. Those are rare things. And anyone who does not value them does not deserve them. I do not hate Amber anymore. I do not hate Garrett. Honestly, I pity them. They destroyed something real and valuable because they could not control their own selfishness. They threw away trust, family, community, respect, all for a cheap thrill. And in the end, they did not even end up together. They just ended up alone, surrounded by the wreckage of what they had destroyed. I am not bitter about what happened anymore. I am grateful. Grateful that I found out before the wedding. Grateful that I did not waste more years with someone who did not truly love me. Grateful that I learned these lessons now, while I still have time to build a better life. Some people say saving yourself for marriage is old-fashioned. Maybe it is, but saving yourself from people who do not respect you, that is timeless. That is the lesson I carry with me now. Not everyone deserves access to your heart, your trust, your life. Choose carefully. Pay attention. And never ever settle for less than you deserve. I still think about that night, sometimes standing in the doorway of my own bedroom, watching my world fall apart. But I do not think about it with pain anymore. I think about it as the night I started becoming who I was always meant to be. Stronger, wiser, free. And that is worth more than any relationship built on lies could ever be. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because they did not respect you? Have you ever discovered a betrayal that changed everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear your stories. And for Mainand. Tijas. End of Tay. And for Mainand. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about life, love, and finding yourself after everything falls apart. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you trust your instincts, value yourself, and never settle for less than complete honesty and respect. Take care of yourself out there. You deserve better than I almost settled for.